Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from here in Taiwan. I'm Jaime Ocon. Taiwan has a new president. Lai Ching-te officially stepped into office on May 20th, along with a new cabinet of ministers. Now, before we zoom in on Taiwan's leadership with our guest today, let's take a look at what the new team is made up of. Our reporter Tiffany Wong has the story.
New President Lai Ching-te revealed his new cabinet ministers, those who will lead major government agencies in charge of national security, economic development, and social welfare policies. Heading it all will be new Premier Zhou Rongcai, who previously served as chair of the Democratic Progressive Party. Ahead of their start in office, Lai also urged the new cabinet to gain public trust. With Lai only elected on 40% of the vote, he wants to signal his government will listen to a diverse set of voices. But many of the key positions, those relating to national security, are holdovers from outgoing President Tsai Ing-wen's cabinet, signaling continuity between the two administrations. Still, one minister stands out. That's Wellington Gu, previous national security chief, and the first defense minister without the rank of general in over a decade. He'll direct the country's military in the face of growing pressure from China, which claims sovereignty over self-ruled Taiwan and has threatened to take it by force at any sign of independence.
You can watch the full report on our TaiwanPlus news website. Now back in the studio, let's discuss what Lai's presidency will mean for the next 4 years in Taiwan. Today, we're joined by Thomas Shattuck from the University of Pennsylvania's Perry World House. He's written extensively on cross-strait relations, as well as Taiwan's domestic and foreign affairs, and actually lived in Taiwan for 3 years. One of those years on one of Taiwan's outlying islands of Jinmen. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to first start off with the zoom-in portion. I just want to take a look at Lai's new cabinet. Are there any new faces that are worth noting?
What's most interesting is the lack of change and the continuity that we are now seeing with shuffling between National Security Council and Foreign Ministry and back and forth, that it shows a message from Lai that he doesn't want to rock the boat. I think part of that is he doesn't have the electoral mandate that Tsai Ing-wen did in 2016 and 2020, only winning 40% of the vote. That kind of shows like you're not really trusted to make too many big changes. And most importantly, there's a US election coming out. So if you are President Lai, you don't want to be a troublemaker. You want to be on the backseat of the US campaign season because you don't want to be the big debate question when Joe Biden and Donald Trump go head to head in another month or so. You want to be the country that is not a problem, and the best way to not be a problem is to be pragmatic, and the most pragmatic way to do that is to have known faces and known entities, and that's kind of across the board. And one of the more important picks is obviously Vice President Xiao. She's very well liked in Washington and the United States. Democrats love her, Republicans love her, and in a campaign season, that is the best possible thing, is to have both parties actually agree on we like you, we trust you. You don't want to be, sad to say, a Ukraine where one party in the United States doesn't trust the government in Kiev as much as, say, the trust that exists in Taipei.
The continuation of the Thai policy in the context of Lai's administration, it's no doubt, but is there anything different though worth noting of his cabinet picks?
I know I'm actually interested in the beyond the minister, who is at the sub-minister level, who are the deputy secretary generals. That seems to be where some of the refreshing picks are. Younger people are in those roles, and I think that is providing an opportunity for the next generation, because now that the DPP is the continuity party, they may run into similar issues that the KMT has, where it's the same people are always going to be in charge, and that stymies growth from the next generation and the generation after that. So by allowing for younger people to take positions of, let's say, semi-power or deputy power, that is paving the way for a new generation of people to take power, because William Lai is in his 60s. Whether he is reelected or not, 4 years, 8 years, there needs to be in the DPP the next generation that is set up, because you can't just have the same people in charge all the time. And once that next generation comes into power, they need the experience, and they also need the trust from their counterparts around the world. They can't just come into these positions not knowing who they are actually going to be working with.
Let's go back to the big three, and this is a ministerial picks, the defense minister, foreign minister, and then the vice president pick. You talked a little bit about the kind of picking of a civilian for the defense minister role. How significant is that for the future of Taiwan's defense?
I think that's very important, and it actually is the opposite of what's been going on in the United States, where under President Trump and under President Biden, we've had retired generals in that position. And that has been the case in the past for Taiwan. So making that shift, I think, is key. I don't know exactly what changes will be made. Personally, I hope that means there's more information sharing about the Chinese threat in the Taiwan Strait, whether more information about the aircraft coming in across the median line, or according to the PRC, there is no median line. Also the naval vessels in the Taiwan Strait, and also the Coast Guard. That became a big issue in February due to the incident around Jinmen, but that issue also, the Coast Guard issue around Taiwan Island itself predates the Jinmen problem. So I'd like to see more information come out of the MND, and hopefully now that there is someone who is a civilian and no military experience, those types of things will come about. That's my wish list. I don't know if that will happen, but it is refreshing to get back to true civilian control of the military, or leadership in the MND going back to a civilian is a really good step in the right direction.
I'm going to zoom out now, and I want to talk more about security in Taiwan, because it has been a hot topic, and we saw U.S.-Taiwan relations under Tsai come closer than ever, and Taiwan continues to increase its defense spending to a record amount. I want to talk about the global geopolitical context in the sense of, with Lai going into office, how do you think relations with the U.S., how do you think we're going to see exchanges going forward with his administration? Yeah,
so going back to the continuity thing, that allows for the pre-existing trust. So we're not relearning who's who can I trust. So the exchanges will likely continue to happen. The delegation that Biden has sent to the inauguration was primarily retired officials. So that was sending a message, not wanting to rock the boat with China, but it also sends a message that we still trust you, because the people who attended the inauguration are some people that have Biden's ear, and also people who are well respected in both the Democratic and Republican parties. We'll see members of Congress continue to go. We've seen a record number of governors across the United States come to Taiwan, which is a new phenomenon. There's actually almost now a majority of US states have some sort of trade office presence in Taiwan. The number currently is between 20 and 25, and that number is set to expand. So we're seeing at both the national and the subnational level interest and exchange in Taiwan increase. And as long as President Lai continues the path that Tsai Ing-wen charted, I don't see that changing anytime soon.
And in what areas do you think we're going to see that interest in Taiwan expand? Economic or military, or what areas?
Yeah, across the board. I think it's important that President Biden continue to utilize the new tools that he has in his toolkit to help Taiwan's security. We now have the Presidential Drawdown Authority, which is a key thing that Taiwan did not originally have. So just being in that, having that authority, and having Biden be able to utilize a certain number or expense to give to Taiwan, I want to see Biden actually follow through on that. There's been some progress, but when you're new to something, particularly Taiwan, because we don't have official relations with Taiwan, there's sometimes a reluctance to not give Taiwan the things it needs because we need to prioritize the relationship with China. So seeing how the war in Ukraine is going against Russia, we now know, like, you need to give Taiwan the things it needs before it needs them. So historically, Taiwan has always purchased the things from the United States. Now the US has the legal authority to give Taiwan or grant or loan Taiwan things that never existed before. So now that Lai is in office, once he gets up to speed, once he knows what reforms he wants to make to Taiwan's own defense, or what his defense priorities will be, then those asks need to be made to Washington.
I'll talk about the situation that could happen at the Taiwan Strait with going to the Davidson window, which is in 2027. Admiral Davidson famously said that China is trying to prepare itself for a potential conflict in 2027. This is not a deadline or any sort of, this is going to happen, but a prediction. And this year falls within Lai's administration in the next 4 years. How do you think the Lai administration, knowing that, is going to try to either manage cross-strait relations or either bolster its ties with the U.S. to prevent that conflict from happening?
Yeah, it's a really tough question because you don't want to be the one in charge when the window shuts. But there are a lot of factors that will change that. Like there's the Davidson window, and then after he said that, kind of the key Biden figures coalesced around that year, which really makes it seem like 2027 is the year. But the thing about the Davidson window is that the year that the PRC will have the ability to do the thing. That does not necessarily mean will do the thing. And I think that's a key nuance that in the United States gets lost. It's 2027, it's happening. It's 2027 is when it could start to potentially happen. But that does give some added urgency that you have 4 years or 3 years to get ready. But the issue with Taiwan arms sales is the things that will be coming before 2027 were ordered when Tsai was probably in her first term because there's such a backlog in the things that Taiwan purchased and going from purchase to implementation. And it's also, you can buy things, you can get things, you also have to be trained on these things. So something that we say in studying cross-strait conflict is 2027 is now. You need to buy the things now, or you really need to buy the things 4 years ago to be ready in 2027. So in some respects, Lai's hands are tied based on previous arms purchases. He can shape on the margins, but the things that President Lai tries to buy or requests from the United States may not be ready by 2027. And that's a key complaint by members of Congress and even members of the administration, that there is such a backlog, not just for Taiwan, but across the board. We are behind. Even in the United States, our aircraft carrier program is behind. So if we ourselves are preparing for a great power conflict, we're not ready. So if we're not ready and Taiwan is not ready, like there needs to be some added urgency, there needs to be reform, and there really needs to be some deep thinking on how we can make changes.
One of Tsai's biggest obstacles as president was diplomatic recognition and just international recognition as a whole. Under Tsai, we lost 10 diplomatic allies. What do you think the future holds for Lai in terms of holding on to that international recognition?
I think it's inevitable that more allies will make the switch from Taipei to Beijing. Which countries make that switch, it's unclear. There was hope maybe in the Solomon Islands, depending on who became prime minister, that it would be the rare switch back. That's likely not happening based on the election results there. But what's important to emphasize is while Taiwan's official number has gone down significantly, Taiwan's informal and unofficial partners have increased and solidified. Like Japan under Tsai Ing-wen has become probably in the Indo-Pacific Taiwan's biggest fan. We've seen strong partnerships grow in Eastern Europe, particularly with the Czech Republic and even Lithuania, with the opening of the reciprocal trade offices in each other's capitals. So we're seeing on the margins, the unofficial support is increasing, and we're also seeing some discontent with China across the globe expand. So if we see discontent grow with China, we may also see support for Taiwan grow. And that may be the case, particularly in Europe, where they are now seeing an authoritarian threat against a democratic country. And in the EU, those types of things matter when many of the countries that are EU member states and even members of NATO were a part of the Soviet Union. And they don't want that to happen to another country, a democratic nation having their democracy taken from them. So I think that, yes, Taiwan's official number will diminish, but while that happens, we're going to see support from other countries grow. And yes, we're not seeing embassies, we're not seeing ambassadors, but we'll see trade, we'll see hopefully free trade agreements. Perhaps Taiwan will get to join the CPTPP. Those are things that actually have not just symbolic importance, but those are deliverables. And a lot of times we lose sight of the symbolic nature of those allies, because it's not unfortunately going to be Paraguay or St. Kitts that send their military to Taiwan's rescue. It would be the United States, the Australia, the Japan, the Canada, and they're the ones that don't have official ties. So really being honest about what Taiwan can expect from its unofficial and official partners.
We just have to wait and see, but thank you so much for joining us, Thomas, and we learned a lot today on today's show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more on TaiwanPlus News, you can follow our social media. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.